The word has spread around the world. It had gone viral. The fact that this tweet said that you were opening the doors here to diversity. We found that tweets to the Chancellor Merkel had increased from 500 on August 22nd to over 2,000 by the 3rd of September. And we also found that within just a short period of time after that, 3,000 to 5,000 refugees began to march from the train station in Budapest on their way to Germany. And they were bringing a message to the world, which we were listening to very loudly. And that message said, change is coming. Change is on its way. Get ready for diversity, because it is here, whether we like it or not. Hopefully, we like it. Now, to the wise listener, this was good news. Good news not just for the refugees and for the immigrants, but for Germany as well. We must keep in mind that Germany has an aging population. As I look around, I see many contemporaries in the audience. Your hair is getting gray too. Have you looked in the mirror lately? And so here in Germany, the average population, as we look at the population, average population of countries around the world, we see that those countries in navy blue and magenta, their average population age is over 35 years old. In Germany, over 40 years old, and moving toward retirement age. So to bring in the diversity from the refugees and the immigrants that are coming here, where the average age of those that are coming in from Syria are probably 23 to 25 years old, they are bringing new blood, new life, innovation, and entrepreneurial skills here to your country, and they will contribute in significant ways if we are ready to embrace them. Germany, I understand, is moving in the right direction. They have set aside over $6 billion to make a difference in terms of the health care, the housing, the educational adjustments that need to be made. And even your own university here is opening arms and getting prepared, unlike my own country, which we are trying to stave off diversity in many ways. But here in Germany, it seems as though you are embracing this diversity. You are proactive in your thinking. This conference speaks to that. Open to immigration and open and appreciative of diversity. If that is not the case, get ready, because you're going to need to make attitude adjustments. Now, to maximize this influx of diversity, we must be smart. We must be smart in that we must be specific in our goal setting, measurable in what we plan to do. We must have attainable goals that we are looking for, realistic and timely in terms of preparing teachers for 21st century classrooms, which is what we should be doing in our teacher education programs. We must make some changes. And the research that I have been doing is helping us to look at some of those changes that need to be made. We're at a pivotal moment in our society. David Kirkland from NYU University describes it as, we are at a space that is between hopeful possibilities and fragile defiance. In the United States, we see a resistance to change going on in Charleston, in Cincinnati, in New York, in jail cells in Texas, where we are fighting diversity. We are not embracing the inclusion of all into our society. And we can contrast that to what hopefully will happen here in Germany. We are hoping that, based upon the title of this conference, that I am led to believe that we must not render ourselves silent or voiceless. We can make a difference, and we cannot tolerate the devaluing of those who bring differences and diversity to our schools and our classrooms. In the United States, black and brown children are more than 6 times at the rate of suspension from schools. Black girls are more than 6 times that of their counterparts in terms of imprisonment. We make up over 60% of the children in prisons. We need change. We need to look at things from a different perspective. And I assume that the assembly that we have here before us, this room, I hope, is filled with individuals who are transformative intellectuals, who are activists, who are thought leaders, who are human rights workers, who are passionate individuals concerning social justice issues. I see this conference as being about empowerment. Empowerment of teachers who in turn will empower our children. And so I will talk for a few minutes about one of the things that I believe is the greatest challenge facing teacher education. We talk so much about pedagogical knowledge and content knowledge. Yes, of course this is important, critically important. I'm not saying do away with that. But we must add another leg to the critical parts of what must be contained in education. It is no longer acceptable to do what is happening to many teachers in teacher education programs across the United States, to give teachers a generic education. This is the content knowledge that you need. Here are a few strategies that you can try out on Monday morning. I have not been out into diverse communities as a teacher educator. This is what many teacher educators must say, because they haven't been out into the communities themselves, and so they are not prepared to prepare teachers to go out into diverse communities. And so many of our teachers get a basic generic education in our teacher education programs, and then they are expected to make adaptations themselves in the field. This we are changing due to changes in regulations for induction programs where teachers only get a partial credential when they leave, even Stanford University. They leave with a master's degree from Stanford University, but with a partial credential. Then they must go out into the field. They must teach, they must work, they must engage with diversity, and they are not feeling adequately prepared. We hope that what is going on at this conference is preempting. We are going to change, starting here, as a model program of what needs to be done to prepare teachers for diversity, for the influx of the 800,000 immigrants that are heading toward this country in a short period of time. And so, as I have done my work across national boundaries, I find that there are some concerns. There are concerns which I'm sure you are aware of, and I'm sure that you've given attention to, but if not, we need to think about it anyway. Everyone, every place that I've been is concerned about rapid demographic changes. Talk about rapid, it's happening pretty quickly here, whether you like it or not. We're opening up. We must open up to change, diversity, and an influx of populations who are not what the majority of the German population, not the language that they speak, not the culture, not the habits, perhaps even different values. And so changes are happening rapidly in the demographics. We find across national boundaries, perhaps that's not the case here, but if it is, we need to check ourselves, inequalities in the distribution of resources across national boundaries. continuing patterns of underachievement for particular populations. There's a different population perhaps in different countries, but they all happen to be of browner hues than the European traditional Western population. But I'm sure that you will not be repeating those patterns here in Germany. But also high rates of poverty are associated with inequality in educational opportunity. When we think about inequality and poverty, we must, let's just think for a minute about the fact that 2.4 billion people live on less than $2 a day. How much is that in euro? Could you, about what?
About the same right
About
now.
the same right now? Oh, gee, I better convert that money back very quickly. Anyway, less than $2 a day. Look at yourselves. Look around this room. How many of you could function even past coffee time on $2 a day? 22,000 children die each day due to poverty. 121 million children are out of school right now, worldwide, because education is not being offered to these children. And it becomes even more alarming when we think about the fact that only 1% of what the world spends on weapons is needed to give quality education to every child who is out of school right now. And yet, it has not happened yet, but it's going to happen here in Germany, right? You're going to set a new standard for the world, and I'm looking forward. Maybe I'll add you to the list of countries that I'm investigating. And so across national boundaries, we're finding large class sizes for the populations that are influxing into your society. But inequity in class sizes will not be the signature for Germany, will it? Culturally and linguistically complex classrooms where teachers feel unprepared, inadequately prepared for the students who are coming in. Will that be the case? Racial and ethnic differences, so different between the students in the classroom and the teachers themselves. What must we do? That means we must, as soon as possible, get teachers into our teacher education programs who look like the students who will be coming into your classrooms. What will we do to make that happen? We have not succeeded in the United States to make that happen, but you will give us a better model of what needs to be done. Insufficient resources in the classrooms for these students who are coming with their families to Germany. In the United States, why are we doing this? It doesn't need to happen, but it is happening. And the students have high dropout rates in every one of the countries that, the populations that I'm looking at, in the countries that I'm looking at, high dropout rates and disengagement by students, inappropriate assessments. We've talked about that. No child left untested in the United States. We need to change that. Teachers, unfortunately, who have very low expectations for these students that are coming into your classroom. 20% of the influx of students that are coming here from Syria are pretty well educated. They come from average to better than average backgrounds, and they bring entrepreneurial ideas and innovations to your society. And so there's no reason for teachers to have low expectations when we look at someone who is from a population of difference. So you won't have the problem that teachers in the United States are experiencing. Am I correct? Okay. Now we realize that these are issues that the rest of the world is struggling with. So you know that in advance. And so I have a colleague, MK Asante, who tells me and he said at one of our conferences, if I make an observation, then I have an obligation. So now, from all of what the rest of the world has seen, and we have this influx taking place, and we're in the midst of it, we know what much of the rest of the world has done with difference and with influx and with immigrant populations. You can make the observation in advance. You have an obligation to do something different, and you have the resources. Thank you so much, Germany. On behalf of the world, I want you to know we are impressed by that $6 billion that have been set aside to make up for the housing and the education and the other needs that you know these populations are going to need. I talked to my daughter. She said, oh, wow, you're in Germany? Wow, you're in Cologne? Wow, it's happening there. And so we're on the cutting edge, and we're going to do something different. I'm depending on you, ladies and gentlemen. So we've made the observation. We have an obligation. Let's move forward and talk about what we need to do. We need to figure out the building blocks. We know what needs to be done. What are the building blocks that must be put in place? Number one, lots of money. That's all right. The more you invest, the more you get back. Also, how to make those wheels work in collaboration, in cooperation with each other, so the right hand is not fighting against the left hand, and we are making things work in a congenial way for the benefits of the students who we believe deserve a good education. Every child deserves a good education. So what do we need to do? Let's think about it. I'm going to talk a few minutes about setting the context. I'll talk a bit about my model of generative change, which has been useful to many programs as they think about what needs to be done in developing teachers who may be resistant to change. Maybe teachers here are different, but most of the teachers I know are a little bit resistant to change. In fact, we're still doing things the way they were done back in the 1800s in terms of teaching in some of our classrooms. So let's get caught up, and we'll do some things differently. And then also I want to talk about what does it mean? What does it mean moving forward? So setting the context. My research evolution, which you are evolving and you're changing over time, I just want you to know about the journey that I have taken. I began with an interest in the writing of African American students. Much work had been done on reading in the 70s and, why Johnny can't read and why Raheem really can't read, and Jamal, and what do we need to do about it? So not just reading, but writing as a pedagogical tool for thinking, and we're still not doing enough writing for the thinking and to grow the capacity of the minds of our students so that they leave our classrooms as producers of knowledge, not just consumers of knowledge. As the president was talking about just a few minutes ago, how do we bring innovation? How do we bring thinking and creative thinking on the part of our students? One thing, we want them to know that we want them to be producers of knowledge. The message that we send quite often is just give me back what I told you and you'll do well in this class. That is not how students do well in my class. I want you to distinguish yourself. I want you to make me think. And if you can do that, the A+. No, I've never given an A+, I'll tell the truth. But the A is yours. Not a problem, not a problem. Distinguish ourselves in terms of building upon. I needed to learn what African American students were doing. I knew about the language. I have linguistic training, but I wanted to know what was happening in their writing. And once I began to understand what was happening in the writing, I began to build on that knowledge in terms of instruction that was going on in the classroom. That's exactly what needs to be happening. First, your teachers need to understand the resources your students bring into your classrooms, and then they must be able to build upon that in curriculum development, in teaching, in practices in the classroom, and that is what I began to do in terms of the rhetorical patterns that students were using and that they were valuing. How do we use that to scaffold to new information that we want them to learn? Once we talked about that with the students and the teachers themselves, we began to help teachers to understand about these resources. Teachers thought this was gibberish. This was not acceptable ways of expressing our ideas, and not interested in learning much about it. But through many workshops and work that was being done in the National Council of Teachers of English and many associations in the United States, we began to try to understand that the cultural and linguistic patterns that your students bring into the classroom they are resources. And we as educators and teacher educators must figure out how to build upon that knowledge in pedagogical planning and best practices in our teaching. So once we began to do that, I began to realize that teachers needed to understand in the United States that they needed to get prepared to work in diverse classrooms. Saddest part is so many people leave our teacher education program. They come in and then you ask them, what are your plans? The plan is to go back and teach in a classroom just like the one I went to. I recruit from a different pool. And those teachers that I want to bring into the program are social justice minded. They want to make a difference. They want to address the needs of diverse student populations. And if they didn't when they came into my classroom, they're sure thinking about it when they leave. And so after looking at the situation in the United States, I began to look across national boundaries and began to see, hey, this is not an inner city or a ghetto problem. This is not a California problem or a US problem. These are challenges and rewards to be found not just in the United States, but the patterns are happening across national boundaries. So you think about it. I don't know all about Germany. Perhaps we can make that a part of our own discussion at the end of this talk about how prepared, how wonderful, how ready for change the teachers are here in Germany, and we don't need to do anything to change our teacher education programs here. So I'll be interested in hearing more about what's going on here in Germany and in Cologne. And so my work, remember I made the observation and I realized I had an obligation. I want my work to have an impact, all right? And so I do theoretical work because I can't be at Stanford and keep my job and not contribute to theory, but all of the work I do must have empirical and practical implications. That's the part I put on. Yeah, okay? They tell you what you have to do. Take that lemon and turn it into lemonade, all right? Make those requirements something that you can live with. All of my work is done in authentic learning environments where the teachers, the schools, the classrooms are faced with challenges of improving education for marginalized population. Yes, you can make that decision. And the work that I do is in three contexts: in traditional schools, in community-based organizations, and in teacher education programs. Now, I decided and realized through the work that I've done that we must reconceptualize the role of teachers. The vision for teachers for the future is not enough to just go in and be an instrument of the state. We must become agents rather than objects of change. Teachers must need to organize and rise up along with the movement for positive change. Generative thinking, those are the teachers that we need when we talk about agents of change. Generative thinking, social justice minded. I had a teacher, I was just in New Hampshire, and I was talking about the history of education in the United States. And I had a teacher sitting right there on the front row in tears. She was trying to figure out why she hadn't heard this before, why she didn't know the history of exclusion from literacy and from learning for certain populations in the United States. It is our responsibility to expose our students so that they can make the decision whether or not they want to be social justice activists in their role as teachers. And education is not a neutral endeavor, and so I suggest that we be on the side of social justice and equity for all. We need teachers who have the ability to be innovative, problem solvers for diverse classrooms. Now, Linda Darling Hammond has said, the classrooms of the 21st century are classrooms that we have never seen before. They're changing every day. The demographics, the students that are coming, the technology, the experiences of the students, they are so diverse coming into our classrooms. We cannot give our teachers a script. We have to give teachers the ability to take everything that they've learned, to bring their own experiences that they seek out on their own, and then go into these environments and learn from the communities and learn from the students what they need to know in order to teach them. They must be generative in their thinking. They must be proactive, open-minded to immigration, and appreciative. See the positive aspects of diversity. They must have knowledge, skills, and dispositions to work with diverse student populations. And if they're not faced with that in their teacher education program, don't waste a year or 5 years of students learning while you figure out this is not where I need to be. If this is not where you need to be, go someplace else and let us develop a new generation of teachers, which I will challenge you to do as we move forward. And we talked about being smart. Good teachers are smart in their goal setting and what they're going to accomplish. And so the work that I'm currently doing in my research is going across national boundaries, looking for common paradigm, principles, and practices that are going on across national boundaries in model teacher education programs that are preparing teachers for diversity. Like I said, I will add this university to my list because I hope that's what you're determined to do. Thus far, I've been working in the United States, in South Africa, Australia, and New Zealand. Why those 4 countries? Because each of them has sizable historical populations that have been excluded and marginalized from the general population. The marginalized people are usually people of color due to slavery, due to colonization, due to apartheid, due to greed, due to immigration and migration. What are the reasons for these? Just look across national. There's a pattern. Okay, so we know what the pattern is. Let's prepare for it and let's do something different. The professionals lack the skills that they need because they're not being trained in teacher education program. Language of instruction is a monumental, major issue in all of these countries, and education for a large part of their population is in crisis. All right? The rich and poor have totally different educational experiences. Is that the case in Germany? The rich, the poor, so different. And we have teachers who are predominantly white, female, middle-aged, monolingual, and are not prepared. And to tell you the truth, when it really gets down to it, if you can get a truthful answer from a good 33%, no, I'm not interested in working with those people. I can understand that. But let's deal with it and decide where you can teach and be effective, and let us find teachers who are willing and open to learn how to be effective in diverse classrooms. Because when the teachers don't know what to do, they're not prepared, they leave students behind who are confused, frustrated, and disengaged. So when we see that happening, don't blame it on the students. Maybe part of it is the students. But we are the adults. We can make a difference through careful planning. And so they have a challenge to make a change. But the question is, are we willing? Are we willing to make a change? You guys, we know what to do to educate students. We know what we need. We do that in our rich schools every day. We know what they need. They need highly qualified teachers, intellectually challenging curriculum, appropriate class size, resource-rich classrooms, teachers who have the knowledge and skills and dispositions and who want to be in that classroom and who believe that those students can learn. Yeah, we know how to educate students, and they come into school every day, passionate, with a purpose and a sense of efficacy about their ability to make a difference in the lives of the students who are sitting in front of them. This is what a good teacher is able to do. We need the same thing in our inner city schools where students will be coming. Now, the first thing we need to be doing is go back to the 90s. So much of the work that we're thinking about doing has already been done. Zeichner, Cochran Smith, and I'm sorry if these are all Americans, please forgive me. Latson Billings, Irvine, Jackie Irvine, Christine Sleater, Rich Milner, Darlene Hammond and Bransford, Villanega and Lucas. Also Ball and Tyson's book on preparing teachers, studying teacher education, diversity in teacher education. All of this work has been done. We know a lot about what needs to be done for good multicultural classrooms and good teaching for diverse students. We also know how to work with these populations that are coming into your classrooms right now. Michelle Foster tells us that if we will be a part of their communities, know who they are, value what they value, we can make a difference with these students. Also, Joyce King tells us that social justice-minded teaching in these classrooms are usually well received by the students. Geneva Gay and Gloria Lassonville and Tyrone Howard, they all talk about culturally relevant learning, and we need to really know what that means, not just the surface level celebration of holidays or eating some food from a particular country, but culturally relevant, culturally synchronic teaching of what goes on in our classroom. And my former student, Django Parrish, is now talking about culturally sustaining pedagogy. So we know a lot, and there's so much more that you're studying here in your context. We need to know the history, what has already been done, all of the information that is available to us. We combine that with the work of, oh boy, it's not showing up. Paulo Freire's work, Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Luis Mall's Funds of Knowledge from the communities that we're trying to serve. Vygotsky's work on scaffolding and internalization on the part of teachers. Bakhtin's ideological becoming, and Giroux's principle of teachers as transformative intellectuals. When we bring all of this together, we have a formula for powerful formula for the preparation of teachers for a new generation of teachers within the zone of generativity. And so building on my work of 2009, the model of generativity talks about individual teachers who have the ability to continue to learn. They come into your teacher education program with experiences with diversity. Now, if they come in there sitting in front of you and they've never done anything with kids, They've not done anything with diverse student populations. Perhaps they should put the program off until next year and go get some experience and then come back. But they should have shown an interest, a willingness to learn about diversity and to learn everything that you have to teach them in your teacher education program, and then to put that together with the knowledge that they learn in the community and from the students to produce new knowledge that is appropriate for that context, for 21st century classrooms. And so my model of generative change, what we are doing in classrooms where I am working, we begin with reflection, using narratives of personal life experience. Oh boy, it was up there. Okay, okay. We did that. Now we're here. Okay, now we begin with reflection to create awakening through the use of narrativization. And many of you do that in your teacher education program. Then we move to introspection on the part of teachers for personal involvement, to be motivated by new perspectives that they're embracing, they're engaging with new theory, new perspectives in your teacher education program, so they have the opportunity to decide, will I accept, will I reject? And they're in a safe environment where they can use this information and become agents. They develop agency on their own part. Then we give them some action research, higher level theory to think about, and they critique the work. And then deciding whether they will engage in internalization from a Vygotskian perspective, and if so, to become advocates for the students that they will be working with, and then moving on to applying that knowledge in classrooms and having experiences before they have responsibility in the classroom of doing some pedagogical problem solving, developing a voice of their own about what needs to happen within their classroom environment, and becoming generative thinkers and having a sense of efficacy about what they can and will do in the classroom. And then I use writing, communities of writers in my classroom, so that they can struggle with some of the issues. Case studies, theory, what do they think, take a stance, plan actions for change, using writing as a tool and thinking generatively through the use of writing. Now the lessons learned is that number one, critical role of culture and community. No, the kids will not come into a generic classroom. They are coming into classrooms, and many of our students need to be taught their own histories, knowledge of themselves, so they can develop a love of themselves, self-care, self-love. Hakeem Madabute said some of the things that's wrong with many of our students is they've been taught to hate themselves because they don't match up with the quote-unquote mainstream population. You can't work well with self-hatred. You must help our students to love themselves and who they are. You may say, yeah, anybody knows that, but we aren't doing it. We aren't doing it. And so community and culture is a critical part of what needs to be going on. A critical knowledge of action, not only action research, but participatory youth action research, engaging students in the research that we're doing as they are producing knowledge and helping us to think through, but also the use of community-based research as a tool for social action. We need a groundswell of a revolutionary movement that includes communities, that includes the people that we are interested in, and if we will use these tools of research on the part of teachers, yes, teachers as researchers, and involving their students in research as well, then we will see change. And we must think about the critical role of language. People think the language isn't a big deal. No, I think you know it's a big deal. It's a medium through which we teach, it's a medium through which our students learn, and it is the medium through which we demonstrate what we've learned and evaluate the learning. So why is it that most teachers in teacher education don't understand language development and the connection between language and literacy development? It's important, it's critical. Maybe we need a little more time in our teacher education program to learn all the things that we need to know in order to be successful teachers. And so we have a model of sustainability that needs to take place. Because once you have this wonderful system in place, we know that we are required, and we start up here in the upper quadrant, where here, we start here in the teacher education program. The teacher educators themselves, I won't say this too loud. Teacher educators, we are a part of the problem. We sit in our ivory towers and we send students out to make a difference, to make change. No. Well, most of us are getting old and we're getting ready to retire. Thank goodness. We need to bring in some new blood that's willing to go out into the communities, to spend time with these students that are coming into these communities. Who we have to teach, how can we teach teachers to do things differently if we ourselves haven't been out there to teach? And so we have to start with the teacher education program. And then once we go through those 4 stages, introspection, reflection, introspection, critique, and the development of voice based upon experience, then we can model change in our teacher education courses, and the students will see that you are a generative thinker. Do your students see you as an innovator, as a generative thinker? Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. They must see innovation within your classrooms, and then they will take it into their classrooms, working with students, and they will demonstrate innovation, generativity in their thinking, forward social justice-minded endeavors, and they will demonstrate it for their students. The students will then take it into their communities, and they will make a difference in the community. And if necessary, then we will have some support from the community when we have to go to our universities and ask for some change to take place. That's how we have a groundswell movement of change, building upon this model of sustainability, getting everyone involved. And so in South Africa, just a little bit that we learned that it takes a village. It takes a village. I know you can't do it alone, but you need to bring in your village, your support, and reaching out into the community to bring the community in. That's where Louise Malle is talking about funds of knowledge. There is valuable information in those communities. Make those communities feel welcome in your teacher education classrooms. Teachers will bring them into their classrooms. They will see themselves as a part of the change that is taking place. In Cape Town, we learn about Ubuntu. Ubuntu. That is not a Western philosophy, but an African philosophy of unity and working together, that it is okay to support each other in learning, in unity. And quite often we say, you're cheating. We even do that in our workshops. We don't encourage people to work together cooperatively and learn through any means necessary to engage with the material, but through Ubuntu, we do bring communities together, and we value the students' culture and their linguistic resources. And so we're learning from New Zealand, from Australia, and that teacher proofing, the curriculum, it's failed. So if that's what you're getting ready to try, you can improve your curriculum, but trying to teacher-proof it, that doesn't work. Telling teachers what to do and how to do every minute, scripting, instruction, that's failed, so don't go there. We know that regulation and legislation does not transform schools, so don't go there. We know that we need agents of change in classrooms who can think generatively, who can do innovative problem solving within their classrooms and match up the pedagogy that they're doing with the needs of the students in that classroom, bringing in their cultural knowledge and all that we need to have powerful classrooms. Teachers who are committed to culture, language, the students' history, these are individuals who transform our schools and schooling. Teachers remain the key factors. So whether you're a teacher educator, a classroom teacher, someone learning, but you're all teachers. We are all teachers. And we remain the key factor in change and making education what it has the potential to be. Initiatives are doomed to fail if you do not have the support and the intellectual capacity of those who must implement our changes within the classroom in generative ways. Becoming excellent teachers requires more than implementing scripted lessons. It takes generative problem solving. So we know all that we need to know to teach children well. But do we have the will to really make the difference, to make equity and excellence for all a priority? I think you do. And I commend you. It's a pleasure to be here in your presence, and I hope that that is the case. We know that good teaching does matter. You know, we have some folks who are talking about, flipped, and then the kids go home and they do everything on the computer and then they come back. Well, that's good as part of it, but I'm a blended learner. Let's do some of that here, and then we can do some of it in the closet or at home. But what about those students who don't have computer access or the discipline to do it at home? You need to know your students and what is happening in those classrooms so that you can plan what your students need. We know that good teaching is cumulative over the years. That's why it's not good enough to have Teach for America teachers in our classrooms for 1 year and then to decide to go into law school and do other things. Because we need teachers who are around, who are committed, who hone their trade over years and over time to become better teachers. We need cumulative knowledge over time. We need valuing of diversity, and we need teachers who are willing to learn from their students. So, but I want to give you what we've learned also is the hardest step, that next step in the United States and a couple other places. We realize that the most difficult challenge is changing teachers' attitudes and their beliefs about students' ability to learn. You can smile, you can say what you want, but there are a lot of people who don't believe those kids are capable of learning. And so I'm going to dummy down my curriculum. I am going to have lower expectations. That's not necessary. And the students know what's going on as well, so they will play you, as the students say. And so we must change the attitudes of many teachers, not all, but many teachers. That is the biggest stumbling block, attitudes and beliefs of the students in our students' ability to learn. We must believe that all students have the ability to learn. And then we must infuse transformative knowledge into these teachers. That is, you may not agree, and we can talk about this during the discussion. Transformative knowledge, according to Jim Banks, says that we challenge mainstream knowledge. That's one way to come up with innovation, by challenging the status quo. You may agree? Let's talk about it. by challenging notions of what is the purpose of knowledge? What is the purpose of schooling? We need to challenge ourselves to think about that. Our goal is to influence power and social relationships, to think about the purpose of transformative education being to help people to improve society. Everybody does not agree about that. Do we need to be on one accord? The impact of transformative education is to enable people to understand social realities in order to change it. Now, many of us may say this is working just dandy for me, and so I don't want it to change. That may be one of the reasons why things aren't changing, but I'm sure you don't have that problem here. So transformative identities are something that we need. Identities as agents of change. Identities of teachers who are proud of the fact that I am effective in schools that are predominantly poor and serving students from diverse backgrounds. And so all of these are issues that we must think about in terms of transformative education in our teacher education programs. And so finally, this is hard too, we must reevaluate our teacher education programs. Think about what are we offering, the methods that are needed to develop teachers who can engage a new generation of learners. This is a new generation of learners. Digital natives who have come from diverse backgrounds. They may not learn or want to learn the same way you learned. And so we must evaluate other models for teacher education and decide if a change is needed. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as I'm moving to a close, there is hope for change. And the hope for change is that within the next 10 years, more than half of our teachers are going to retire. In the United States, we're going to be needing 2 million new teachers in the next decade. Large numbers across national boundaries. They are South Africa. They're aging too. And we've got to bring in new teachers, new thinkers. And how are we going to do that? Due to attrition, due to old age, and some of them really do need to retire. This is an unparalleled opportunity. The next decade, all of this is happening at the same time. We're bringing in new students to the classroom. It's time for education to do some things better that we have not been doing better. And so we have an unparalleled opportunity to influence teaching methodologies, professional development, and approaches to how our children will be taught and how they will learn. This is very exciting, and teacher education programs should see this as a golden opportunity. Think about your retirement and who should replace you. Not somebody who's probably just like you. Bring in that new thinker, that innovator, that entrepreneur to do something different and to bring in new ideas into our teacher education program. This is an opportunity to prepare a new generation of teachers within the zone of generativity. And so as we move forward, let's not stagnate. Let's get ready for the migration, the immigration, and let's look forward to the socioeconomic equalities rather than inequalities that are persisting in so many other places. I want to leave you with a challenge. We need to develop a transnational agenda. We need to work together, which is why you have people who coming here who have studied education in different places. Put our heads together. Find out what is working, and we need to become a united force because policymakers aren't listening to teachers. But if we become a united force, perhaps they will. And so we need a new agenda for working together. A new generation of teachers who see themselves as members of a global community, not just that little community they came from, not even just Cologne, but for the world. We are educating people for the world because we don't know where our students are going to end up. They are willing to go anywhere for mobility and for change and to have a better life. And so we must educate them as citizens of the world, and we must educate them as agents of change. I leave you with a final quote. We realize that we are part of a global community, and Martin Luther King realized it a long time ago when he said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." We are caught up in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. If they fail, we fail. So whatever affects one poor, marginalized, excluded child directly, it will affect us indirectly, if not immediately, over time. And so we must take this seriously, and we must challenge ourselves to do things differently, and I look forward to our continued conversations. Thank you.